Good morning, students. Welcome to our English class. Today we shall start our poem. Today I wrote this poem by Ken Nesbitt. Ken Nesbitt is an American poet who has written poems which are silly, funny, and about the everyday activities of children. Today I wrote a poem by Ken Nesbitt is an amusing poem in which the poet has beautifully described his poetry writing skills as well as experience. It is a wonderful poem which gives the message that creativity cannot be judged on any parameter. It is free from any restriction. This poem is poet's best creations. He recalls the incident when he wrote this poem. He thought that the teacher would criticize the poem on technical parameters. His teacher would remark on the negligence of the use of poetic devices such as metaphor, simile, alliteration, personification, and any narrative sense. According to him, the only thing that was appreciating in the poem was its rhyming scheme. Despite all the faults and his negative remarks, the poet sent his poem for evaluation. Surprisingly, the teacher awarded it with A+ grade. Welcome back, students. Let us discuss the poem. Today I wrote this poem by Ken Nesbitt in detail. Today I wrote this poem, but I am not sure if it is good. It doesn't have the things my teacher says a poem should. In this stanza, the poet writes that he is not sure about the quality of his poem. According to him, there are so many shortcomings in it. It doesn't have the qualities of a good poem, which must be there according to his teacher. The teacher has set certain parameters, means to say the teacher has set certain parameters of a good poem, but this poem lacks those parameters. Let us read the second stanza. It doesn't share the feelings I have deep inside of me. It hasn't any metaphors nor a simile. In this second stanza, the poet tells the readers that the first fault the teacher would find is the lack of true deep feelings which are missing in the poem. The teacher would criticize the poem as it has no poetic device such as metaphor or simile. What do you mean by metaphor? Metaphor is a poetic device which is used to compare two things that are otherwise incomparable. And simile, it is also a poetic device to compare two things, but here we use the words as and like. Now let us discuss the extracts of this poem. Let us discuss some questions from this poem. Today I wrote this poem, but I am not sure if it is good. It doesn't have the things my teacher says a poem should. It doesn't share the feelings I have deep inside of me. It hasn't any metaphor and not one simile. Our first question is, who is I in the first line? I is used for the poet in the first line. I is used for the poet in the first line. Who is the poet of these lines and from which poem these lines are taken? These lines are taken from Today I Wrote a Poem and its poet is Ken Nesbitt. Our next question is, why is the poet not sure about his poem? Answer is, he is not sure about his poem because it doesn't have any deep feelings and poetic device like metaphor or simile. Good morning, students. Now let us continue our poem. Today I wrote this poem by Ken Nesbitt. It's missing any narrative, alliteration too. It isn't an acrostic diamante, or haiku. In this stanza, the poet writes that the poem doesn't have any story in it. Alliteration is also missing. Alliteration means repetition of consonant sounds. The poem could neither be classified as acrostic poem, nor diamante poem, and nor haiku. Now question rises, what do you mean by this acrostic? Acrostic is means a poem in which particular letters are used to form a word or words. And diamante is also a form of poetry that is made up of 7 lines, means the shape of diamond. It creates the shape of a diamond. And haiku is a 3-line poem with 17 syllables. Let us discuss the next stanza. There is nothing that's personified. It doesn't have a plot. I'm pretty sure that rhyming is the only thing it's got. In this stanza, the poet writes about other essential poetic and literary elements missing in the poem. The poem doesn't have personification and proper plan. Personified means personification. This is the poetic device, which means personification means to give an animal or non-living object the ability that only a human can have. Here the poet wants to say that his poem lacks personification, this poetic device, and proper plan. Plot means plan. But the only poetic element that is there in the poem, which is there, the poem has, is the rhyming scheme. Welcome back, students. Now let us discuss extract from this stanza. It's missing any narrative. Alliteration 2. It isn't an acrostic, diamante, or haiku. There is nothing that is personified. It doesn't have a plot. I'm pretty sure that rhyming is the only thing it has got. Let us discuss the first question. What do you mean by alliteration? Alliteration means repetition of consonant sound. Alliteration is a poetic device. Okay? And alliteration means repetition of consonant sounds. Just like in Baba Black Sheep, B sound is repeated. The sound of B is repeated. So here alliteration is used. Okay? Alliteration means repetition of consonant sounds. Let us discuss the next question. What do you mean by acrostic, diamante, or haiku? These are some forms of poetry. These are some forms of poetry. Okay. Next question. What do you mean by personified in the first line of second stanza? The poet means to say that he has not used personification in the poem. Personification is the poetic device which is used to give an animal or non-living object the abilities that only a human can have. The poet means to say that he has not used personification in the poem. Personification is a poetic device. Okay. Personification is the poetic device which is used to give an animal or non-living object the abilities that only a human can have. Next question. What is the only thing that poem has got? Rhyming is the only thing that poem has got. Rhyming is the only thing the poem has got. Welcome back, students. Now let us continue the poem. Today I wrote this poem by Ken Nesbitt. It sure was fun to write it, and I think it's long enough. It's just too bad it's missing all that great poetic stuff. In this stanza, the poet defends his poem by saying that he likes writing it, and it is long enough. The poem is long enough. he regrets. Regrets means he feels bad that he could not put all those literary elements in it. He could not use all those poetic devices in it, and he could not give any form to his poetry also. He felt bad about it. Now let us discuss the next stanza. I put it on my teacher's desk. In spite of all these shortcomings, he put the poem on teacher's desk. For what? For evaluation. The poet is proud of the fact that he handed the poem for evaluation. And the teacher gave him A+++. And wow, she made a fuss. What do you mean by fuss? Fuss means to give a lot of attention. Here, fuss means to give a lot of attention. The teacher gave lot of attention to his poem. She handed back my poem. What do you mean by handed back? Returned. She returned the poet's poem with an A++. This means she liked that poem. In spite of all the errors which he had made, according to him, the teacher gave him A++. Welcome back, students. Now let us discuss question answers from this stanza. It sure was fun to write it, and I think it's long enough. It's just too bad it's missing all that great poetic stuff. I put it on my teacher's desk, and wow, she made a fuss. She handed back my poem with an A+++. Let us discuss the first question. What is too bad about the poem? The bad thing about the poem is that it has no poetic stuff. The bad thing about the poem is that it has no poetic stuff. Who is the speaker of these lines? The speaker seems to be a child as he talks about his class and his teacher. The speaker seems to be a child as he talks about his class and his teacher. Let us discuss the next question. Why do you think the speaker's teacher liked the poem even though it didn't have all those things? Although there are so many shortcomings in the poem, yet the teacher liked the poem because it's a unique poem. Because it is a unique poem.